All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us in today's Jerusalem Press Club webinar. My name is Talia Dekel. As we continue to deal with the consequences of life under the shadow of a pandemic, political battles continue with no state budget in sight and the potential for another election. The city of Jerusalem is yet again under the microscope for construction plans, and Israel reportedly assassinated Al-Qaeda's number 2 in Iran. Joining us today is a guest with experience in several arenas and can comment on some of these issues. Knesset member Nir Barkat of the Likud party is widely recognized in Israel as mayor of Jerusalem between 2008 and 2018. He was a leading name in the tech industry and one of the founders of Checkpoint. Mr. Barkat is also a member of the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, Mr. Barkat.
My pleasure.
So before we get into the domestic issues, let's just quickly address the weekend's breaking news, if that's okay. How often does Israel take out American targets on behalf of the US government, and what was the assassination in exchange for?
Well, I don't know if the details are right or wrong, naturally. However, I think that aligning interest with the United States of America, combating terror, is the right thing to do. So if indeed some of these details are true, it would not be surprised, and nor should anybody be surprised, as the enemies of the terrorists are a global threat to all the world, and Israel would chip in our knowledge and experience to help combat the global terrorism. So I'm not surprised at all if this is indeed true.
Understood, thank you. So we'll move on to domestic issues. While parliamentarians may be conducting business as usual, millions of Israelis are at home, prevented from going to work because of what may appear to be arbitrary and inconsistent restrictions. How long can we expect Israelis to sit still, and how long can the taxpayers' purse continue to fund government handouts?
Well, I think if you look globally, there are very, very different ways to combat coronavirus, and Israel's chosen to combat it in a way that sort of closes areas that have high degree of viral infection. Personally, I believe that we should look at additional models coming out of the second lockdown in order to prevent a third lockdown. We should focus on the people at risk. There are about 15% of the Israeli population or global population that is at risk, meaning over the age of 67 and with some kind of all kinds of different people with diseases. And we should zoom and make sure that that population does not get infected. If we're capable of making sure the vulnerable people are not infected, we could probably allow ourselves higher degrees of freedom to open up the economy. But everyone in Israel understands that it's first health, then it's economy. Without having managing the coronavirus, our economy is going to go down the tubes anyway. So only once we have articulated or combated in a professional way and manage the coronavirus, then can we start developing, enabling the economy to scale and go back to where it was before. I have a lot of ideas of how maybe to do it better, but life in our country, as it is probably in other places in the world, that it's easy not being a decision maker at this point to propose great ideas. Basically, I'm saying I'm optimistic. I believe that Israel will challenge coronavirus, will get our economy back to where it was before. It may take some time, but I'm very optimistic because Israelis are very innovative and creative, and we will be able to overcome long term. It's just that it's not a simple situation to be in right now, but I'm sure we'll get out of it.
All right, well, the government failed to pass the budget since taking office in April, and we're nearing the end of the year. Last week, Defense Minister Gantz accused the Likud of torpedoing the budget several times. How do you respond?
I would like to separate the short term to medium term. The short term, which is this year's budget, we've dramatically increased our budget over 4 times, knowing that the coronavirus is going to take lots of capital to help the businesses, to help the education system, the health system. And within sort of trial and error, we've dramatically expanded our packages of additional capital and budgets. And we changed it 4 times. Right now, till the end of the year, till the end of 2020, the budgets are there. There are frameworks for the budgets, and all of the different ministries know their budget till the end of the year. It's true that formally the budget has not passed, but informally everyone knows their marching orders and the capacity in their budgets. Now, for next year, I do believe we should start the process of developing a budget for next year. It's probably going to take 3 to 5 months. There are no shortcuts. You can't run a 100-meter dash in a second. You can't do a marathon in 10 minutes. It's a process, especially because of the complexity of coronavirus. Until now, this year, we did not look at the income. We only looked at the expense side, which is fine. So naturally, we're going to have a huge deficit this year, but we all understand that long term we could stabilize it, exiting Corona, spread that deficit for the next decade or 2, like all countries do, and come out of it. So I think there's a political discussion side by side to the professional discussion. Professionally, I feel very fine with understanding that we have a budget for this year, probably till the end of March, because the first quarter of 2021 acts and reacts similarly to the first 12 months of 2020. So we have enough time till the end of March to finalize the budget. Unfortunately, around this, there's lots of political discussions. Blue and white want the budget to be passed immediately. We believe that any process will take its time. And there's a political discussion about it. I don't think it's a big deal. We could overcome those differences if blue and white do not want to go to elections. So if there are hidden motivations or political motivations around this, there certainly could be. That is, in my mind, the issue really on the table. Because, again, professionally, the path is very simple.
Understood. And having said all that, are elections in your interest as someone who had his eye on other roles in government?
Well, elections are there if the government does not work. In other words, right now the government is quite paralyzed. It's very, very difficult to pass any decision. A lot of decisions are postponed. The parliament, because of this process, is also quite paralyzed and not stable in many, many ways. This is not a healthy position to be in. The governance is not the best we've seen, to say the least. And so the key question is, do we want to continue managing the corona and budget in the country in a process that is quite paralyzed, or let's go for elections and hopefully we could have decisions made and have and change the situation. It's sort of, it's not as good. Any decision is not the best, but the key question is, do we want to go to elections for getting out of the frozen situation we're in? I personally think that if the government can't get its act together, and I'm not trying to blame somebody specific, it's better for everyone that we go to elections.
Okay, and if that's indeed the case, you said it yourself, it took this current government 3 rounds to actually secure a coalition. Do you think that given the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu's approval ratings plummeted during the second wave of the coronavirus, the Likud will actually obtain enough mandates to justify a government, to form a coalition?
Well, I think that you folks watching and overlooking Israel know that in our region, it's hard to predict the past. So who am I to predict the future? I believe that things here could turn around so quickly. And if I were Blue and White or Bennett or others, I would not enjoy the polls that you see right now, because they could flip on them very, very quickly. Long term, I believe that towards March, we will see significant changes in the health and the economy of Israel. And people have, sometimes short memory and much optimistic view as to the future. And if you compare, not now, not yesterday, but at the end of the coronavirus, at the performance of the government and compare it to other places in the world, you may be surprised. People may feel that after all, we put this coronavirus behind us, and the future has to rely in the hands of the Likud and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Okay, we've got a few questions that have come in from journalists regarding the finance ministry specifically. Finance Minister Katz blamed you for turning the capital into the country's poorest city. Do you really want to be responsible for the state treasury, especially after the last few ministers in charge, Katz himself included, Kahlon, Lapid, have all been accused of doing a poor job? It seems like you would be set up for failure.
I will accept the job of Minister of Finance any day, tomorrow, the next day, in the future. I come from the business world. I learn and know the challenges that Israel faces, probably as good as anybody else, is managing the city of Jerusalem, which is a sort of microcosmos of Israel, if you'd like, for 10 full years. I know the challenges, and I believe I know the solutions to a lot of the old problems that are on our table. I also believe that the Ministry of Finance needs to be shaken and restructured, and we must bring many more people that have a lot of experience to business experience and private sector experience to the ministry, which lacks lots of practical business experiences. So, from my perspective, I prepared a plan prior to the elections. Prime Minister Netanyahu really liked the plan, which is the 6 major reforms I proposed that Israel goes through, that we will follow through. Those reforms are ready and waiting for me and the government to execute on them. So again, I believe that from my experience, I could do a much better job, and I'm waiting for such an opportunity into the future.
Understood. Just one more question we have on the coronavirus management that somebody sent in, and then we'll move on to the geopolitical situation. It seems as though the government is handling 2 of the populations with the highest rates of morbidity, the ultra-Orthodox and the Arabs, with political rather than health considerations at mind. Why have you been unable to utilize your experiences working with these communities as mayor of Jerusalem when it comes to management of the crisis?
Well, first of all, I'm not part of the government right now, so I'm not sure I could answer on behalf of the people making decisions. But I would say that I believe that the framework of shutdowns, local shutdowns where you have high degree of infection, I believe there are more effective ways to govern the country. Again, let me emphasize, if you look and give every municipality the list of 15% of the people that are at risk, and let them manage, get the community to help, get the municipality to help, the family to help the people at risk, and continue maintaining a high degree of distance and wearing masks, we can dramatically decrease the number of people, the deaths and the number of people who go to hospitals. This model is being approved by Professor Amnon Shashua from the Hebrew U, from Mobileye, and many other scientists. And if we take that approach, then the ultra-Orthodox manage the ultra-Orthodox cities, the Arabs manage the Arab cities, the secular manage the secular cities, etc. And you have much less friction between the different sectors of our country. I believe it makes more logical sense to take that approach versus the current one. And now there's naturally, if you look at the the differences between the populations, naturally the ultra-Orthodox population and the Arab population, the density at home, there's many more people per square meter at the home. Therefore, the infection rates are higher, and they need more aid. You cannot compare two people that live in a 100 square meter apartment to a dozen people that live in 50 square meter apartment. And naturally, that's those differences between the different sectors we must take into consideration and help them rather than blame each other. As mayor of Jerusalem, you must find a way to get people to take accountability and responsibility on their city and on their community, and not focus on blame games, which don't help anybody to get better performance fighting Corona.
Okay, we do have a few more questions on the topic. It must be the most interesting thing right now. You can't blame them. What do you think of the policy of purchasing vaccinations and the fact that the Prime Minister had to beg the CEO of Pfizer to secure a batch for Israel?
I think the result is what counts. And if you know how to get vaccines to our country faster than other places, we must applaud our Prime Minister. From my perspective, it's smart, quick reaction to get the best results for our people. And I'm very happy he did it. And if we need to do that with other places, do it faster and make sure that the cure comes faster, the more the better.
Are you optimistic that we will be able to get through the winter?
I'm an optimistic person generally. I think that our health system is a healthy one, responsible one. And the reality is, in my mind, that we're probably best set under these circumstances to give the best solutions to the Israeli population during this winter. We'll wait and see. But I am optimistic as I'm ever, that our system could do better than anybody else. Very smart doctors and good system.
Okay, sorry. We're going to move now on to the geopolitical situation. You've proposed a plan to invest more in Judea and Samaria, but in 2 months, Joe Biden will replace President Trump and is likely to look less fondly upon settlement expansion than his predecessor. Shouldn't Israel be more cautious in its next steps in this regard?
Well, let me share my vision to Judea and Samaria with you, and it's regardless of which president in America or other people in Europe. The reality is that Jews can live anywhere they want in the world. They can live in Rome, in Paris, in Rabat Amon, in Cairo. Certainly they can live anywhere they want in Judea and Samaria and any inch of the land of Israel. It's their right, from my perspective. By the way, not only Jews, Muslims and Christians the same. So all people, as long as you buy legally, can live anywhere you want. So for me, Judea and Samaria, the strategic solution long-term has 3 elements to it. The first, civil separation. The Palestinians manage their own cities and towns. The Israelis manage their own cities and towns. Nobody's going to go anywhere. In peace, civil separation is the right thing to do, period. 2, security. Israel must have full 100% security on every inch of the land. Unfortunately, we've learned and saw that the Palestinians flip on us and sometimes become violent and terror. And so we should be in a position to deter and to fight and combat terror and violence anywhere in Judea and Samaria. And number 3, what I propose that is not developed as much as I believe it could be is joint economy. Joint economy is work I've done with Professor Michael Porter from Harvard Business School and proposed how to boost and improve the economy net, if you look from professional business eyes. And so we're talking about expansion, dramatic expansion of the number of industrial zones that are in Area C under control of Israel. that enable many, many more Israelis and Palestinians to work together in industrial zones that have elements of very strong Israeli technology and entrepreneurship on the one hand, and have cheap land and labor on the other. You will see many, many industries go to these zones and become very, very successful. And it's for the benefit of all people. It's a people-to-people peace in many, many ways. Also developing a dramatic amount of sites, tourist sites that tell the story of the Bible. The biblical Israel has tens and hundreds of stories from the Bible that I know the world would like to see. So we must develop these themes and enable Bible lovers from all over the world to come and enjoy tourism at the highest degree and see the land of the Bible. And last, to develop the Israeli cities and towns side by side to the growth of the Palestinian cities and towns. Today, the footprint of all of the Israeli cities and towns in Judea and Samaria is less than 3%. And we could fit in 2 million Israelis that live in the settlements, in the blocks, in Israeli state-owned land in Area C, in less than 10% footprint. In other words, we could develop and maintain that separation, that civil separation, let people live wherever they want. The Palestinians can live in their areas, and Israelis can live and develop in their areas and have a joint economy. This is something that, for me, makes a lot of sense looking into the future. And there's no reason, if there's no peace, we must execute on this plan. But especially if there is peace, we must execute on this plan and recognize how we live together side by side. So for me, this plan, which I've shared in the past, I will put it back on the table very, very quickly in the next few weeks again, is something that I would like to happily discuss with the American administration, Democrat, Republican, be bipartisan on these issues and explain the rationale behind an honest and fair win-win plan for the Middle East.
Do you feel that you have counterparts in the future American administration to discuss these plans, or is it basically ideas at this point?
When in the last half year, unfortunately, I did not travel to the United States. And I think that everyone's sort of busy with themselves. But the first plane I could take to the United States, I'd be happy to do so, open up these ideas and maps. My experience is managing probably one of the most complex cities in the world, Yerushalayim, with a population of 900,000 residents, 300,000 Arabs, 200,000 ultra-Orthodox, and 400,000 general public, secular, national, religious, and others. I know how to seek win-win, and I know how to make sure that these ideas eventually people understand that this is better than any other alternative. And this is the plans I will put on the table in Europe, in the United States, and anybody that wants to listen. Just a few weeks ago, I had some ambassadors from Europe come to me, and they're interested in the plan. They've heard I have a plan. I've shared it with them, and they're interesting. This is different than what they've seen before. And I believe this is something that could hopefully get merit and get more people to agree to take a serious look at this for how to live together in the land of Israel.
If indeed you believe that it doesn't matter who is in the White House, then why did Israel rush to publish a tender for the houses in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Givat HaMatos only this week, if there's still 2 months left of the Trump administration? Well,
first of all, I want to use this opportunity and thank President Trump. President Trump, in the last 4 years, has taken a stand and dramatically pursued new ideas or old ideas, but things that were sort of sitting on the fence by recognizing moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Many people thought that it could be chaotic or problematic. And when we actually saw that after the move of the embassy, Jerusalem has never been more quiet because many of the Arab residents of Jerusalem understand that we're probably going to be living together for the rest of our lives, and the city will not be divided. Similarly, in Ramat HaGolan, the move in Ramat HaGolan, and basically sharing with the world that the cities and towns in Judean scenario are not illegal. And more bold moves that were planned that did not happen. I want to thank President Trump for what he's done, and put that a second aside. Yet we recognize that there may be differences between us and the Democrats, and there may be differences of opinions, but we really strongly value the strategic relationship with the United States of America, which are based on values and experience and interests, and hopefully we'll be able to get to a high degree of cooperation with them as well. Now, with respect to Givat HaMatos, I planned that area. I planned that area as mayor of Jerusalem. It has three elements to it. It's a piece of land on the southern part of the city. Part of it is for hotels and people that want to go to Bethlehem, lots of Christians. It will be the last stop before crossing the security fence to Bethlehem. Now, this is something that is long due, and people are waiting for it. Then there's two other elements. An area that is about a third of the land is owned by Arabs in Bet Safafa. And that land is for expansion of Bet Safafa, for the Arab residents of Jerusalem. It's owned by them. It's their, they intend to build homes for their children and to enable Bet Safafa to expand. And the other element is for anybody who wants to bid and buy the land and develop the city of Jerusalem. We do not have a lot of free land in the city of Jerusalem that has not yet been dished out. So from my perspective, this is a plan long due. Unfortunately, for the wrong reasons, it was not put out for bids as it was yesterday. And I'm so thankful and happy that we could continue expanding the city of Jerusalem for the benefit of the Jews and Arabs and tourists and many people that will come. And so from my perspective, it should have been done decades ago.
All right, very clear comments. MK Nir Barkat, thank you again for your time today.
My pleasure, and I'm happy to speak to you. God bless you. See you soon.
I'd also like to thank Uri Drami, Director General of JPC, and Rachel Ziel, Press and Programs Coordinator, for facilitating the webinar. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Goodbye.